That's not a good reason to like a character. What do I actually know about this character? I know nothing. I only know that I like this actor. And I feel like the show was relying heavily on people being invested in something like a character or a potential ship because people like that potential ship, not because they were actually well written or even well established. Hi, welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. My name is Brenly. You can also call me Bren, and I make reaction, review, and critique content here on the web. And today I'm going to be reviewing the show called Zomvivor. Before we jump into it, I want to be very clear about something. Just because I have an opinion you may not agree with, and that opinion may not be that I loved the show, because I didn't, that does not mean I am hating on any of the actors, the cast, the crew, the company, the director, or anyone involved with the show. I'm allowed to have an opinion that is that I didn't like the show, and I'm going to talk about why, okay? But this is my disclaimer. Having a critique, reviewing a show is not hate, all right? So let's try to keep the comment section respectful. If you disagree with me, that's totally fine. If this really offends you, that's also totally fine. But just so you know, reviewing something is not hate. Honestly, reviewing something is not hate. Okay, so without further ado, let us jump into my thoughts on the show Zomvivor. Zomvivor is a series that came out on October 31st, 2025 and was released on Netflix worldwide. It was produced and created by Domundi, okay? But it was premiered on Netflix, which is a really big deal. It is also technically the company's first show that is not a QL. Zomvivor is about a group of students who are attending university, and one day a sort of zombie outbreak occurs on their campus, and they have to figure out how to not only survive, but also why the zombie outbreak happened. The narrative follows essentially 4 different groups: the communications/science kids, the school cheerleaders, the group of students who study PE, and something that I'm labeling as the adults. Ning, who is played by Janice, who I think does a really great job, is a science student, and she has a younger brother who also attends the university, who's a communications arts student. And essentially, I would say she is the main character of the show. Other people might disagree with that, but based on the writing, she is. And she was doing research with a professor about this mysterious illness that her mother has. And all we know at the beginning is that this is somehow connected to the outbreak. All right, I tried to give a plot summary with as little spoilers as possible. That is essentially what the show is about, but please know, as we get further into my review, there will be spoilers. I thought we could start today by talking about what I did like about the show as a kind of way to ease us into me talking about some of my critiques and issues with it. My favorite part of the show was the acting performances. Honestly, everyone did a really great job, and also because of who they included in the cast and the way they structured the story, even though I did have some problems with that, but we'll talk about that a little bit later, it allowed a lot of people to shine who aren't normally folks who are in some of the Domundi productions or main roles in the Domundi productions or in Domundi productions at all. It also allowed some folks who have had a lot of main roles in the past shine in different ways that I have yet to see. My list of standouts includes, but is not limited to, Tudor, Tommy, Nett, Jimmy, Nat, Park. Oh my gosh, Park was amazing. Okay. Dream, who is the person who plays Mook. Honestly, I was really impressed by everyone, but those were my standouts. Their performances were really, really captivating. For example, Park, who I haven't seen in that much, although I did watch his series that he was in this year, and I liked him in that, but he really impressed me. There's one scene after his characters turn into a zombie that he and Nett are having this scene together. Their characters were very close, you know, really, really good friends. And he was just so good at acting like a zombie. Some of the zombies in the show, like, it kind of would seem a little over the top, when they were trying to act like and shuffle and like do zombie facial expressions. But Park, oh my God, he got that role down so well, which I think it's hard to do because he had no lines in that scene. And I think sometimes if you're not a very good actor, if you don't have lines, it's really, really hard to emote, because if you're not a very strong actor, you kind of like bank on being able to show your emotions with your voice. And he is a strong actor. And I mean, Tudor, oh my God, Tudor was another standout to me. Like, I've seen him in other roles, of course, before, but this one stands out to me as one of my favorite roles that I've ever seen him play. They also used practical effects really well. For example, it was gory and bloody, and it looked good. Honestly, it was scary. And that is, you do want to be scared in a zombie film or TV show. So I actually think I really, really liked that. And let me talk about a scene that I really, really liked, that I thought was really well written compared to the rest. In the finale, there's a moment where the entire cast of characters, pretty much of people who are alive in one of the groups, are in a scene together in the janitor's office. And in the janitor's office, they are confronting each other and the truth is coming out. And oh my God, the beats of that scene were so well executed. The scene didn't feel too long. The writing was tight. And the characters, the way they interacted with each other, oh my gosh, I was very impressed. Like, the writing in that scene, it was interesting. It kept me engaged. And let me just say, Mook, final scene before the final sequence of the show, she starts calling people out. And so far, it was such like a justified character journey for her, because the entire show, she had kind of been, sort of like very kind and timid. And then when something happens, a character dies who she, really cared about, which is Pow. Oh, rest in peace, Jimmy. I mentioned Jimmy in my list. I hope I mentioned Jimmy in my list of standout actors. Jimmy absolutely killed it. He was amazing. But here's the thing. I always expect him to kill it. He, in my opinion, he's a scene stealer in the best way. Like, his performance is always so captivating and strong. I'm never worried. Like, if Jimmy's in a show, I know he's going to eat at whatever role he's doing. But her character was close with Pow, and Pow went through something traumatic. And so after that happened, this thing happened with Pow. Her character goes on a very interesting rapid development phase. And it's so interesting because she and another character who I really like, Pooh, played by Boss, who you might know from like Love in the Air, they end up being the de facto leaders. And I honestly think that was such a good choice. I mean, the entire show, I was so frustrated because this one character, San, who is a character who is very annoying, but the entire time he was trying to be the leader, because San is kind of a misogynist. We'll talk about him when I talk about my issues with characterization. He's kind of a misogynist. Not kind of. He is a misogynist, okay? And the way he treats women in the show, I'm like, dude, stop. But the entire time he's kind of trying to be the leader, because he's very like an alpha male type. And finally, in I think it was the 6th episode, someone in the group was like, yeah, you're not the leader, shut up, which I was like, thank God. Let's vote on who the leader is. And I was like, thank goodness. And they voted on Pooh and Mook. And that was the best choice they could have made. And honestly, narratively, I was like, yay. So, okay, as you can see, I was just engaged by the show, and I've thought a lot about it. And I think that is something I want to mention, because the show is not boring to me. It was engaging. That is another thing I liked about it. So when Mook confronts the folks in the scene and starts calling people out in the final episode, I was like, yes, that is so justified and so much fun. And that scene was just put together in such a tight way. It's likely they worked really hard on not only directing and filming that scene, but writing it too, because it was such an important moment for the narrative. Because in that scene, they figure out something that's very important for essentially the climax of the story. Something else I really liked were Tudor and Nat's characters. Their names respectively were Win and Knight. And those two, oh my gosh, they were so compelling. I did not come into the show thinking that their two characters would be the ones that I got like the most attached to. I thought it would be Jimmy's. Although I did like Pow a lot, but Tudor and Nat, they just worked so well together. It was compelling. And they essentially get separated from the communication art science group, and they end up with the cheerleading group. And Knight starts trying to troubleshoot how they could essentially develop a weapon to help stop them from the zombies from hurting them. And he's using his science to do it. Oh, it is so cool. It is so cool. Honestly, every single episode I was like, where's the cheerleading squad? I would like us to go back to the cheerleading squad now, because they're a lot more interesting than something else that's going on right now. Because I don't know, I just felt like their characters and the cheerleaders were all very compelling, because they all genuinely seemed, the ones who had lines all genuinely seemed interesting in their dynamics with each other. And Tudor's character was another interesting character. Oh my gosh. I really enjoyed learning about him and his friendship with Lily, and kind of the way he interacted with the other characters as well. I thought that was good. Oh, let me talk about Lily. She's one of my favorite characters. I'll never forgive the writers for what they did to her. But that's fine. That happens in zombie shows. We're not at the critique section yet. Y'all will know when I'm critiquing. Lily is a character that is queer-coded. And although one could argue there's a lot of queer-coded characters, it maybe depends on your interpretation. But in my opinion, Lily is the character who is the most queer-coded. And her relationship with Fa is also it's kind of implied they have something going on, which we'll talk about that in a second. But she was very interesting to me because she was the kind of character that Mook grew into being. Someone who stands up for the little guy, someone who doesn't take shit, and someone who tries to be a good person. And maybe that's probably why they turned her into a zombie in, like, what was it, episode 2 or 3, which again I was very upset about. But that happens in a zombie show. I don't have a problem if a character dies in a zombie show. That is something we can all expect going into it. But she was really, actually, surprisingly a well-rounded character for the short amount of screen time and the kind of short story arc she had before becoming a zombie. She also has a story arc after becoming a zombie, which I also I can't tell if they're trying to do like a warm bodies thing. Who knows? But Lily was really, really compelling as well. In my opinion, character-wise, the MVP though, the most valued player was Pooh, Boss's character. Although we'll talk about him a bit more in the characterization section. But in my opinion, Pooh was the most redeemable person. He was interesting, and he was a kind, smart leader. Now, the most improved player, in my opinion, was Mook. She was entertaining, and I don't know, I really appreciated both of their inclusions in the series. I was actually worried neither of them would survive until the end, because neither of them are Domundi actors. But they both survived until the end of season 1. Sorry, that look of fear you just shot through my eyes, because we might be getting a season 2. I don't know how I feel about that yet. So yeah, it wasn't the worst thing I've ever watched. We just talked about some of the things and the characters that I liked about the show. So now let's move on into the critique part of my review. We can summarize my issues with Zomvivor in these categories: characterization, plot, and then I guess I would say the ending. And maybe under plot, we would say pacing and story structure. Okay, so those are kind of the three main categories of issues that I have with Zomvivor. I think if you were to summarize it, I would just say that execution is my problem, and maybe it's because it's only 8 episodes. Maybe they just didn't have enough time. I'm not quite sure. I have a way I would have written it, but it would be a very different show. And I think execution would be the best way to summarize it. So let's talk about characterization. So first of all, my biggest issue is that there are way too many characters, okay? As I mentioned earlier, there are 4 groups that I have labeled: the communications arts / STEM students, the cheerleaders, the PE students, and the adults. I'm calling them the adults. I'm not sure what other people who are watching this show would call them. And also, everyone technically in this show is an adult because they're in university. But I mean people who have like PhDs, and they are full-blown adults that are not currently in school, okay? So there are just way too many characters. And I think if someone is watching this and they are not as chronically into Domundi and the world of Thai QL entertainment as me or some of my lovely community here, if you had no clue who these actors were, I personally believe that this show would be very, very hard to follow. Let me go into why I think it would be hard to follow. So, in the first episode, the show opens immediately after the zombie apocalypse has already begun, which I think was not necessarily a choice that I think was smart because it gives you no time to actually learn and care about the characters that are running from the zombies. Obviously, the show wants you to root for the survival of the humans. That's pretty basic. But we don't know anything about them. There is nothing about them at that point that we know that we would care to learn about them. So the first sequence is literally zombies chasing some of the, I think it's comm arts students, if I'm remembering correctly. The first opening sequence. Now that is good for it's not starting off on a boring note. But my issue is, but because I know who these actors are, I know we're supposed to care about them. But at this point, I'm like, okay, we're just seeing people getting chased by zombies. I would directly say that this is the opposite of what The Last of Us does. I'm probably going to bring up that show a few times. I'll try not to spoil it too much. But I do think, despite people have issues with it, of course, but I do think the video game and the first season are very well written. It doesn't matter if you like it. I just think it doesn't matter if I like it either. I'm just going to use it as an example of what I think a good, well-written first zombie episode is. And so in The Last of Us, the first, I think, almost 45 minutes take place before the infected apocalypse begins, before a very large time jump. And instead of just opening, for example, with Joel's daughter, Sarah, being shot, they introduce you to Sarah. They make you care about Sarah. You sort of see the world through Sarah's perspective, through her perspective, as you are learning also about who Joel is before the moment when everything goes to shit. And it sets up the tone for this series almost perfectly. Because what kills Sarah? It's not zombies. It's humanity. Which perfectly sets up the theming for the series. Because let's be real, while The Last of Us does take place in an apocalypse with infected running amok, who are the real villains? Humanity. Revenge. How people treat each other. That is one of the lessons of The Last of Us. We can even see that in the name. The Last of Us. Because even if that means, there's only a few humans left, I also think it means there's only a few humans left with humanity. I just give myself chills. I don't think it's a perfect series. There's lots of issues I have with it. But I do think the first episode is well written. Zomvivor does the opposite of this. The first episode, they take forever to actually introduce to you things about the characters. And even when they do, they don't firmly establish enough about all of the characters. And it's hard because, okay, remember there's 4 groups. The adults, the PE students, the cheerleaders. Let's talk a bit about the science and communication arts students. At one point in the show, there are 15 members of that group. Listen to me, 15 in one group out of 4. Just think about it. Think about it that way. And I only know there are at least 50. I mean, I could have counted. Sure. I could have counted. But someone actually in the show, in the dialogue, she says, we're a group of 15. Which is why I'm sharing it with you all. And I would include a clip, but, you know, Netflix is very, they love to strike down videos. So I've never reacted to a Netflix show on here, so I'm very worried about that. Feel free to go check out the show. I'm not making that line up. That is a problem. 15 characters in one group out of 4. Okay, maybe if the 4 groups were 15 named characters out of all. So my background a little bit is creative writing. I have been taught that you do not want to have that many characters in one group. But even if you do need to have that many characters for the story you're trying to tell, because you know, you can make anything work if the writing is strong enough. They don't introduce them well enough. I was struggling to figure out character names. I kept having to refer to an online source that had a list of all the main characters. Because at some point, I was just calling them, oh, look, there's Ned. Oh, look, there's Max. Oh, look, there's Jimmy. And that is a problem. Because if you have no knowledge of who these actors are, you're going to be confused. So very confused. Let's think about the title. You know how I went on a little tirade about what season 1 of The Last of Us is about. Zomvivor. It has the word survivor in it, right? So obviously they're going to be wanting us to root for people to be the survivors. The Zomvivors, if you will. I hated that as much as you, I'm sure. They're going to want us to root for someone to be the Zomvivors. If we can't get emotionally connected to them, how can we root for them? So because of the bad pacing and lack of character development and character introductions in the first episode, that was a major problem for me, but that is not where my issues with characterization end. So a lot of my other issues hinge on lack of character development and bad characterization. And listen, I know some people online have been like, well, some of these characters are bad people, therefore I don't want to root for them. Listen, that happens in a zombie apocalypse story. I am not expecting these characters to be good people. And let me also remind you all, by me critiquing a character or how the narrative wants us to perceive a character, it does not mean I hate the actor. Okay? I just need to say that again. All right. So, for example, I said earlier that Pooh was the MVP for me. And that is true. But the issue is he's flat. The only thing about him is that he's a good leader. There is nothing else about him. We don't learn anything really about his backstory. We don't know why he's carrying around that thermometer. We don't learn anything about him, really, except that he's a good leader. That is not good writing. He's listed as a main character. He survives until the end. And yes, I like him, but that's because he's one of the only rational people in the biggest group, which is the communication arts / STEM kids, okay? And also he's dressed kind of like Lara Croft from Tomb Raider, and he looks amazing. Not a good reason to like a character. I wish I could tell you what his major is. I don't know it. Wish I could tell you who his friends are. I don't know it. The only thing he is there to do is to be rational. And that frustrates me because I think we should have learned a little bit more about how he fit into the character dynamics of the group and who his friends were without him, because the only thing we know is that he's a rational person. Do you see my problem? Do you see what I'm trying to get at here? So we can apply what I'm calling the poo theory to a lot of the characters. Now, I will admit, a lot of the characters were really well developed. I'll list out a few. Jean, Pao, Ning, San, Prow. Yeah, but you'll notice I did list a lot of names. There's way more characters than that. There are a lot of named characters in this show. This next point I make about characterization might be very controversial, okay? So to me, I think the show wanted us to ship San and Non. I feel like no one's going to disagree with me on that. But what I'm going to say about this might be controversial. And please know, by me saying this, I am not hating on Z and Nunu. Okay? I don't have a problem with them. I like them. I don't like what they did with them in this show. Okay. So now that I've gotten that out of the way, please keep that in mind when I'm saying what I'm about to say. San is a horrible person. He's a misogynist. He is an alpha male type. I bet you if we were to look on like San's podcast listening history, it'd be like the Joe Rogan Experience, Aiden Ross, like he'd be a fan of the Paul brothers. You get the vibe. San gives to me a stereotypical alpha male. And yes, he's an alpha male with trauma. Trauma does not excuse misogyny. The way he speaks to women in this show greatly frustrates me. It is sexism, the way he speaks to them. And the way he discounts women time and time again. And the way he treats the girl he's dating, Ning, which mind you is Non's sister. We'll talk about that in a second. The way he talks to all of them genuinely is gross. Now, I'm talking about the character, not about the actor. I don't know how many. I'm probably going to put a message on the bottom of the screen right now. Like, I'm talking about the characters, not about the actor. He is a misogynist. He's also abusing drugs because he's having a traumatic response to a situation that he witnessed and was the bystander effect. Okay, I'll try to get into this without being too confusing, but essentially one of the main plot points and reveals of the show, and we'll talk about this later when I talk about the plot, is that this billionaire's son was trying to assault a lab assistant, and she stabbed him in the knife with a syringe with this mysterious serum that was in the syringe, and then he killed her. And San was a witness to this, so were the billionaire son's other friends. And a lot of his trauma is rooted in this. And he even talks about this in that scene that I was complimenting in the beginning of the essay, where he is like, you know, Non is the only one that could tell the rot that was within me. Like, he was the only one that saw it and the only one I could confide in. And like, it's clear that he and Non are trauma bonded. And I would also argue he's emotionally cheating on his girlfriend with his girlfriend's brother. Even if they weren't physically cheating, which they say they're not, but I don't know if I believe that. Because everyone in this show is an unreliable narrator. Let's be so for real, except for Pooh. But actually, we don't know enough about him to say if that's true or not. Anyways, he's clearly emotionally cheating with Non. And also the way he's possessive of Ning too. I think it's honestly, and before I start talking about why I do not ship San and Non, this is the controversial part. But before I start talking about that, a plot point in the show is that Prow is a shit stirrer. She is one of the girls in the show. And honestly, she's angry. She's kind of evil. She's an entertaining character. Like her in a scene, she's entertaining. And one of the things she says is she's in the bathroom with Ning and she's like, by the way, San is cheating on you with me. Which some people don't believe because Prao had told Mook that San was cheating with Non, and then Mook revealed it to the group in that scene I really like, and Non and San deny it. Also, I don't know if I believe them. I also don't know if I believe Prao, but I do kind of believe that she was sleeping with San because of the way he treats her. Every time she speaks, he looks scared shitless. He looks like he's afraid of what she's about to say. And also I noticed when he's in scenes with Ning and Prao, he looks very, very nervous, especially when Prao starts talking. And honestly, part of me thinks that that's because they slept together. And what she said about him cheating was right. But even if he didn't cheat on Ning, he's still a misogynist from the way he talks and treats women. I also don't like the way he treats other people. But that is the context about San that you all need to be aware of before I say more. Oh, also, it's implied that he's abusing drugs. It's not like said, but you can see it in the show. And, well, it is kind of said in the show. And he's like, but I experienced this traumatic event. And like, I get it. Go to therapy. Genuinely go to therapy, my man. But because of this, it makes me not want to ship him with Non. I don't want to ship Non with an asshole. I'm not going to root for that. Because even if he's not a cheater, you're still in a committed relationship to his sister. And even if that wasn't the case, he's still an asshole. So like, honestly, there's a few scenes between them when the soundtrack will play really like romantic music. I just can't ship them. I'm sorry. But I can tell the narrative wants us to ship them. And honestly, I feel like maybe they thought by making him having trauma and Non and him being bonded over this trauma, being trauma bonded, would be a way to narratively convince us to ship them, despite the fact that he's kind of a shitty guy. When I say he, I'm talking about the character, not the actors. Okay. So that's what I think. I think the narrative thought by including that he's traumatized, that would make us forgive him easily. And I'm sure some people did. But to me, I cannot. I'm sorry. I would have loved to come out of this show shipping them. I would have. But I just can't. And then we get into the other problem, which is Non. We learn barely anything about him. We only learn that he sort of has like a younger sibling who can't ever live up to his elder sibling syndrome. That's pretty much the only thing we learn about him. Oh, also besides this plot about who his dad is. But that doesn't have to do with your personality and your characterization. That has to do with some other things going on in this show. In the preview and in the poster and all the marketing, they're making it seem like Ning and Non are the main university characters. Also San. And I would argue that San and Ning are the main university characters along with Jean. Non barely speaks. Most of the time he's just in scenes reacting to things and he'll have like a quick one-off line. And so my issue is we don't learn enough about him for him to even be considered a protagonist in season 1, in my opinion. And the times I liked Non the most was when he was interacting with Yim's character, whose name slips my mind because there were way too many named characters in this show. We'll talk about Non's ending in this show a little bit later in the video, but I wanted to learn more about him. But out of the two siblings, Ning is the most well-developed. She is. And if you, Again, I am not sending hate to any of the actors when I'm critiquing their characters or critiquing the writing of this show, okay? I just feel like I keep having to say that because I've seen a lot of things online. I could elaborate further on my issues with characterization, but I feel like we pretty much covered it. And I wanted to leave you all, before we move on, with this screenshot I took of the My Drama list so that you can see all of the named characters and you can see just how many there are. I'm including the ones who are main and secondary leads. All right, let's go to talking about plot. One of my main issues was how this show was structured and paced, and that directly is connected to the plot. So, for example, this show had so many flashbacks, way too many flashbacks, and they would often last way, way, way too long. Oh my God. I wanted to pull out my hair, okay? And a lot of times in these flashbacks, the scenes would also last way, way too long. Why do we have like 25 beats in a scene that could have been 10? Why? Honestly, it kind of felt like the entire show was leading up to the reveal of what caused the apocalypse. Now, I can see why they were doing that, especially considering, the character's connection to it. But because of that, it also, they withheld information that wasn't related to the reveal that likely should have been released sooner to help us gain more context. And again, maybe this is the issue with only having 7 episodes. It could likely be that issue. Also, they had 3 years. They had a while to perfect this script. Why didn't we work on making it tighter? I think one of the best examples is there's a scene in the finale that takes place in a bar that has Joe, the billionaire's son, San, the guy who I spoke about a little bit more, who's played by Z, and Joe's other friends. And this scene essentially is like the billionaire is saying all this stuff. Joe is saying all this stuff to his friends. And he's like, you guys have to obey me, otherwise I'm going to destroy you. Which, fine, that's a simple scene and it makes sense for Joe's character. The scene just lasted way too long. It was simple. It was fine. And then it just kept going. This is typical in a Zomvivor episode. There will be many, many moments like this. And there are so many flashbacks. Why are we having so many flashbacks in the finale? We are in a zombie apocalypse show that is titled Zomvivor, which is clearly a play on the word zombie and the word survivor, which implies that the implicit promise will be survival. Something else implies that the implicit promise will be survival is the opening sequence, which again, I'm not a big fan of, as we talked about before. But what was the opening sequence? Not people doing science in a laboratory. It was people running from zombies. Which implies, again, run, hide, fight, survive. Not, let's have 10,000 flashbacks. Sorry, that was a little disrespectful and rude, but I was literally getting so frustrated with the amount of flashbacks and how long they were in every single episode. Too many. There is better ways to reveal information. Something else that bothered me about these flashbacks. The perfect example is when they reveal why the zombie apocalypse happens. Then they do this thing, and they do it multiple times. They'll reveal information to you, the viewer, and someone else who's learning it in the flashback. And then they'll have someone verbally repeat it in a later scene to other characters. That works in something called Dungeons and Dragons, where you have the rest of the party leave the room and it's just the dungeon master and you learning information, and then you have to reveal it to the rest of the party, or you roll a really high perception roll and the DM whispers, that NPC is actually Vecna. So then you have to tell the table that NPC is actually Vecna. That is when it works. If it's done like this, it's repetitive. We are wasting time. And it's bad writing to do that. It is bad writing. The other thing that has to do more with writing than, I guess, pacing. Well, it could be both. In the first episode, they have an issue where they're only showing. They are not telling at all. Now, of course, there's that saying, show, not tell. But you have to tell a little bit to show the world building. And even in the first episode, or maybe it was the second, they mention show, not telling. I was like, you cannot be serious. Y'all did not tell enough. We don't know anything about these characters. We don't care about them. I kept having to check myself because I would be watching the show and I'd be like, I really love Torn. He's so cool. And then I would have to check myself and be like, wait, I don't actually love Torn. I don't know anything about him. The reason why I like him is because I think Max is cute. That's not a good reason to like a character. And that's how I felt with a lot of the characters. I would have to keep checking myself because I was like, what do I actually know about this character at all? I know nothing. I only know that I like this actor. And I feel like the show was relying heavily on people being invested in something like a character or a potential ship because people like that potential ship, not because they were actually well written or even well established. That is where I feel the show went wrong. My other issue hinges on a huge part of the plot. Now, this is going to get really in the weeds. So if you haven't seen Zomvivor yet, this might be confusing. So I apologize. But a big part of the plot is that Non and Ning's mother is in this like coma and has some mysterious disease. And Ning and this professor who, spoiler alert, actually is secretly Non's father. Come on. That's so cliche. Cliche can sometimes work, especially in a very tropey show, like a zombie show. But they're trying to solve and wake her up. And because they're trying to do this, the professor ends up developing a serum, and he develops it with an infected jellyfish, a jellyfish that has a parasite in it. He didn't realize it had a parasite in it, and everyone he tested it on with the infected with the parasite serum is the people who become the zombies. Okay. Are we following what's going on here? Ning was not involved in that, by the way. Okay. So Ning was out of the equation in the lab at that point. But the mother having the mysterious illness is something that the plot of it really, I had a hard time suspending my disbelief, okay? And when we're in a story like this, you know, it's not going to be accurate to real life because it's sci-fi fantasy. It's dystopia. This at this point in life cannot happen. It is, and if it does happen, that's going to be crazy. So we have to find a way to suspend our disbelief. And when we're writing a show like this, you do have to try to suspend your disbelief, but you also have to make it believable. Does that make sense? So let me talk a bit about what I think is a believable example that allows us to suspend our disbelief. And then we'll kind of talk about my issues with Zomvivor. Okay? So the believable example in my head is The Last of Us's premise of why the apocalypse happened. Spoilers for The Last of Us. Sorry. Also, I don't think The Last of Us is perfect, but I do think they have a very unique concept for a zombie apocalypse, or as they call them, the infected. So in The Last of Us, the apocalypse is caused by the cordyceps, I guess, fungus. And in real life, the cordyceps is a fungus that essentially takes over the bodies of ants. When they get infected, they control them, and it essentially causes them to create more infected with cordyceps. It's literally zombies in real life. And right now, cordyceps cannot live in a human body because of how hot our body temperature is, okay? So what The Last of Us proposes is because of global warming, which is real, climate change is real, okay? But in The Last of Us, the climate change that happens causes the cordyceps to evolve and to be able to withstand a higher body temperature. Do you see where they're going with this? So the cordyceps evolves and is able to take root and take control and therefore kill and steer human bodies. That's crazy. That's crazy, chat. It's also very creative, like mushroom zombies. Who would have thought of that? Who would have thought of that? Like, it's so unique. And we can suspend our disbelief because it's justified. It's justified. That's how I feel about the cordyceps virus. Okay, so now let's talk about Zomvivor and why I had trouble suspending my disbelief. So, the mother is having this mysterious illness. Guess who also is? The guy I keep mentioning, the billionaire's son, Joe. Now, here's the reason. The billionaire, who's also known as the patron, very mysterious. It's okay, I do that in my writing too. Sometimes I'll be like, this person's called the donor. You know what I mean? Like, it's fine, it's fine. I also hate naming characters, so I get why they'd want to give him like a mysterious name. Although I think he does have like an actual name in the show. Nevertheless, he wants this doctor, who is Ning and Nan's mother, to create a serum that will prevent his body from decaying after he passes away. Because he believes that if they keep this a secret and they make it seem like it's something holy or that only affects their family, it will essentially cement them as a supernatural billionaire capitalist tycoon that will cement them as being special and the other and better for generations to come. Of course, like evil billionaire capitalist, like let's be real, this is not surprising, you know. Okay, so evil billionaire capitalist. So the mom is working on this serum. We don't need to talk about the reasons why. This is not a plot summary. This is a review. Essentially, they're to protect her family and so that her family can afford to go to university. Long story short, if you're interested, go watch it. You can watch it on Netflix. Okay. So there's a lab assistant who, when I saw her, I went, oh my God, Babe from Your Sky. I think it's the same actress. This lab assistant, Joe, tries to assault her. And to defend herself, she injects him with this serum that she had been injecting into mice. Now, of course, the billionaire is not happy about this. Also, Joe, by the way, Joe kills her. Of course he does, right? And the mom, she injects herself with the other vial of this mysterious serum so that the billionaire won't hurt her kids, and also so that there's like a ticking time bomb, so she has to fix Joe before she gets into trouble too, and therefore the billionaire will leave her family alone. Which I understand. She wants to protect her kids. My issue with this is that it's stupid. It's stupid. Besides protecting your kids, whatever. Why would the scientists not know what's in the serum? It would make more sense for them to, let's say they don't know what's in the serum. Let's say, because I don't believe that. Because in a lab, even if they're doing something illegal for a billionaire, because of the way the scientific method works, and if you don't know how the scientific method works, look it up, okay? You should have learned that in like 7th grade science. I did. And I went to a crazy school. I still learned how the scientific method works, right? Scientific method is standard. Scientists will be using the scientific method even if they're doing something illegal because they have to keep a record so they can know how to improve better for last time if they don't perfect it on the first try. Also, essentially, scientific method is important so for research papers and stuff like that, but she's doing something very illegal. There would be no way there's not a record of what that serum is doing. And if they had a record of that serum was in that serum, they would probably then know how to better treat what was going on with Joe and the mom. Which maybe that's why maybe that's where he is getting the jellyfish from. And it's all stemming about there's something with like blood count and stem cells, whatever. Fine, I'll give them that. But if they don't know what is in the serum, because my issue is the serum clearly was either something they were trying to induce death in these mice, or it was the serum to prevent their body from decaying. But the way it's acting is like they're acting like it's a disease they have, which is, I just don't think the science was there. Like, I am not a scientist, okay? But I know the scientific method. Most of my friends in university were STEM kids. I was the communications kid who hung out with the STEM kids, okay? So maybe I was non. Little Zomvivor inside joke for you guys there. But let's also say they don't know what's in the serum, because that's certainly how they were kind of acting. Instead of injecting it to herself, they could have taken the serum and tested it to figure out what was in it. And the fact that I'm still speculating about all this means they didn't make it clear enough for me to get what was going on there. And I did rewatch that scene multiple times because I was like, hold up, there's something funky going on here. Because I don't think it was this, it doesn't seem like it was the serum to preserve them, but maybe it was. But if that was the case, why were they fixing it with a serum that was trying to preserve and immortalize the body? Do you see where I'm having? You're probably confused. I'm confused too. Okay? Wow, I probably spoke for a long time about that. And if the mom doesn't get sick, the zombie apocalypse doesn't happen. I think it would have been a lot more interesting if, I don't know, by like breeding the mice or whatever, they accidentally created like a super COVID. And you know what I mean? Like, I just am having such a problem with the inciting incident that causes the mom to go into a coma, which therefore then causes the zombie apocalypse. Does that make sense? Now, they did have a science consultant on the show, okay? It wasn't listed in the credits. And I feel like the thing that's going on with the jellyfish in the show might be rooted more strongly in science, because also it just made a lot more logical sense. There's jellyfish that are infected with a parasite. That makes logical sense. But yeah, I have an issue with the whole how the mom got sick. Does that make sense? I feel like it wasn't written clear enough. I think it was written in a confusing way, and I don't think I can suspend my disbelief. There was also another plot hole that I felt the series introduced. They introduced something and then they dropped it. And it has been haunting me ever since. So in the first episode, there's an announcement over the radio that's like, we will rescue you. If you come to the top of a building, we will rescue you. And of course, let's be real, they were never going to get rescued. Obviously, the government was going to take out the survivors, right? That's pretty basic dystopia, okay? Because government evil, billionaire bad, which is true, billionaire bad, okay? Let's be real. And most of the time, government evil. We can all be really real about that. Let's, just in case y'all didn't know where I stand, government evil, billionaire bad. But so they go up, and obviously it's from the military, and they shoot at them, which makes sense because government bad. Especially dystopia. It's a dystopia, remember? Dystopian zombie apocalypse for the university. Now, this is where I get some questions, because I think it was pretty clear that that was the government. The billionaire, separate from the government, from what we know. Or at least what was established. If they wanted to imply he was part of the government, they should have made that clearer, huh? Sorry, that was a little sassy of me, wasn't it? But anyway, so it's clear that the military has been instructed, shoot to kill, okay? That was on day one. I would say they are there either 3 or 4 days before the end of the show. They don't actually like say day 1, day 2, whatever. Also, with all of the flashbacks, the way the time moves in the regular timeline gets very confusing. Every time a flashback happened, I was like, stop it right now. Anyways, that's day one. We never see the military again. We never hear about it. That's confusing to me, because wouldn't the government be wanting to take out this quote unquote ground zero outbreak? If they were going to try to shoot survivors, wouldn't they be back? Wouldn't they be there either to study the zombies or to kill them all? I'm honestly, that is something that I was thinking about every episode. I was like, where the heck is the military? Where the heck is the government? Did the billionaire pay them off so that the government wouldn't, bomb the university to take out the zombies? It's never answered. Now, I don't know if I would have had that question if they hadn't introduced the concept of the university being roped off and sectioned off from the world, turning off the cell service, turning off the internet. Does that make sense why I'm having these questions? Another thing that I don't know why this was never addressed. Why didn't they think, why don't we try escaping? Because after that failure with the helicopter, Pooh, his first thought, based on what we know about his character, should have been, okay, well, let's try to leave the school a different way. Why wasn't their next thought, let's try to survive to get the heck out? I cannot be the only one who had this question. Because the show wasn't about them trying to escape, which is very obviously what you would be trying to do if you were in a zombie apocalypse that was only in one area. Now, if the zombie apocalypse was worldwide, that would be a different story entirely. Do you see where I'm going with this? And maybe that's what they would have done if different choices had been made, like maybe their plan hadn't failed and maybe the billionaire didn't come. We'll talk about the ending soon. The billionaire didn't send people to pick up Ning and Non. Of course. They got their plot armor. So yeah. Like, for example, Night and Win, Night is in there in this greenhouse with the cheerleaders. By the way, writer's room, why didn't we see more of them? They were very interesting, everything that was going on there. Developing this way to essentially get the zombies away from them. Using science and mushrooms. Very cool. I don't know if I suspend my disbelief with that. It was believable that this adorable little nerd named Knight, love him. He's my Shayla, okay? I didn't expect to like his character. I don't know. I don't really know why. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to feel about the STEM kids. But I ended up really liking Knight. Anyways, why weren't they just being like, we're trying to get to the border of where they've sanctioned us off to get us out? And maybe it's because they just thought we would assume the military would hurt them there. Okay, show us that. And then they have to figure out, okay, are we just going to try to survive here until we can kill all the zombies? Like, do you see where I'm having these questions? Okay, another thing they could have done is, let's say the military was at the border stopping them from leaving the border of the school. They could have been trying to dig a tunnel to get out, or find a way to jump from one building to a building that's outside of the quarantine zone. This is logically where my brain is going, and I'm asking all these questions. Why are people not doing these things? Because they know it's not, at that point, because of the radio, they know it's only their school. That's the part that's confusing to me. And there's even dialogue. Fawn at some point says, I have to get out. I have to see if my dad's okay. So why are we not trying to escape? That is another plot hole that really made me want to rip my hair out, because I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't ignore the possibility that they could just be trying to escape, like cut through the barbed wire fence that the military somehow put up overnight. Also, Do you see? Do you see what my issue is? Okay, I feel like I've spoken about this point way too much, so let's move on. Let's talk about the ending. Now, before someone goes, Brinley, you just hate open endings. No. Open endings can function really well sometimes. For example, I saw the TV Glow has an open ending, and it is a very powerful piece of media, and the open ending does not sit in a confusing way. It does sit in an uncomfortable way that is true to the implicit promise of the movie and the themes and characterization that are set up in the entire movie. By the way, I highly recommend watching I Saw the TV Glow. Now, I don't have an issue with an open ending. I think they were wanting to set this up so they could make sure they have a season 2, and which, you know, they probably will have one. And I don't know how I feel about that. But I will withhold my judgment for now because we don't even know if it's real. Like, we've just heard people say it online. Like, we don't, you know, some of the actors involved have been like, oh yeah, season two's going to happen. I'll believe it when I see it, and I'll watch the trailer and I'll see if I want to give it a second chance. Because listen, I love Domundi. I love Domundi Productions. I love Domundi actors. And I've typically in the past really loved this director's work. So I would love to give this show a second chance, although I'm very disappointed with it currently. Okay, so the ending. Everything comes to a head with, by the way, let me be clear. While I said there are 4 groups, the cheerleaders barely get any screen time, which is a shame because they're interesting as hell. I wanted more cheerleaders. So, you know, maybe if there's a season 2, we can get more with the cheerleaders. Cheerleaders also includes Win and Knight, okay? Although I don't know if they're cheerleaders, but they were originally with the science and communications kids, and then they ended up with the cheerleaders, which I just wanted all of them to have more screen time. And like, I love an ensemble series. Like, that is not my problem with this. My problem, again, is the writing. So in the finale, the science and communication kids, essentially, they have this plan. It doesn't go right. They end up almost having to do, we're going to turn somebody into a zombie on purpose. It's interesting, I guess. And then they all end up on this rooftop running from a horde of zombies, okay? And this helicopter shows up, holding within it the scientist who is working with Ning on this cure for his mom, who is Nan's father. And he's there to pick up just Nan and Ning, no one else. And Ning gets in because she's holding the serum, the untainted serum for Joe. And the other girls try to get in with her, and they're like, no, only her. So at that point, she now knows that they're only taking her and her brother. And she and the scientist, who is Nan's dad, keep being like, Nan, get in the helicopter. And he is refusing to leave his friends, which I thought was very, I can't say if it's in character because we really don't know enough about him. I can't say if it's in character or not. But I did like that because I think one of my issues with Ning is that she, by the way, very interesting character. Janice did a great job. I enjoy Janice's performances a lot. Ning is very selfish, and in my opinion, her and San were both uninterested in forming bonds with the other survivors. So her being selfish, that does not surprise me. Now, does that break my heart a little bit? Because something I really love about a survival story like this is the concept of found family. Yes, that does break my heart a little bit. And that's also kind of why I like the cheerleaders better. They are better at coming together as a team. And they even allow Win and Knight to become part of their team. Cute. I love found family. It's my favorite trope. My favorite non-romantic trope. Anyways. Ning is in the helicopter. She's like, Nan, get in. Nan doesn't get in, which I like. And obviously, the finale, for context, is called The Chosen One. So I knew one of them was going to die. or / become a zombie, either Non or Ning. Okay. And there's a horde at the door trying to get on the rooftop. Ning is yelling, Non, get in, get in, get in. And Non makes eye contact with Mook, who's holding the zombie blood that they were going to inject someone with earlier. And they kind of make eye contact. And then Mook stabs him in the neck and he collapses. Now, I've seen some people online coming after Mook saying he didn't give his consent. I actually think he did. And if you disagree with me, rewatch the scene. And if you still disagree with me after rewatching the scene with new eyes, come back here and tell me. But from the eye contact that Non and Mook made, it really seems like this was something that he knew was coming. And essentially, the group believes that if they were to inject him with this special zombie's blood, that they would be able to get the zombies off their back. Because even though he would be a zombie, they would respect him as like the head zombie. I'm simplifying it a lot. But so he collapses, and the final shot is, I honestly really like this. The helicopter going away, Non in a group of the science communications kids, and the other group, the cheerleaders, running up from another the other side of the roof, and they're all coming together at the end, and Non is there collapsed. Honestly, if they had faded to black credits there and stopped, I might have liked that. Oh, honestly, something that would have made it even better is if, as like the camera, because I think they were maybe using drone footage zoomed away, if we saw like the zombies break through the door, that would have been a very interesting way to leave it, I think. Although I don't necessarily know if that's how I would technically fix this scene, but it would be interesting. But my issue is the fact that we have extra credits, which again is teasing a season 2. I don't think we needed it. Because in the extra credits, it only gave us more questions and answers, which of course we know. I know someone's going to be like, it's brilliant, it's to tease season 2. I don't care. I didn't like it. I did not like that writing choice. I think it would have still left room for season 2 if it was just Non laying in between his friends, because I don't even want to say friends, because sometimes he would say something to the group that I'd be like, dude, what the heck? This seems very out of character. Like he once threatened to kill one of the other characters, and I was like, what? That's coming out of nowhere. Again, he didn't have enough screen time or development for me to tell you really anything about his character, except that he's the sister of Ning, the son of the scientist, maybe having an emotional affair with San, and is a drama kid, I think, or he might be a film major. And he's friends with Yim's character. That's what I could tell you about him. Also, he told Mook that he was going to kill her. Or maybe it was Prow. One of the two of them. That felt very left field. Nevertheless. And then Janice's character being like, you can go. That would have been really interesting, because that would have told us a lot about her. Or been like, no, don't go. And they pull away anyways or something. I think I would have liked that. I know it's very different than my other points, because my other points hinge on writing and plot holes. But this last part of my review about the ending is only objective. It is literally my subjective opinion that I do not like that there were after credit scenes. And I also just don't love the final scene on the rooftop. I just think the execution was off. Also, there are 2 characters missing from the scene. So like the cheerleaders come up, and then there's 2 cheerleaders missing. And the last time we saw them was in a greenhouse. And it's never shown what happens to them. So I don't know if we're supposed to assume they're dead or whatever, but I don't know. I don't know. I think if they had, it just wasn't that narratively justified to me, and I didn't love it. I just didn't love it. And it's not because it's an open ending. I think I would have liked it if it was more open instead of just leaving us with questions. Because in my opinion, teasing a sequel is not necessarily an open ending in the same way like I Saw the TV Close ending is. I'm not sure if I'm making sense, but again, this is just my subjective opinion. Okay, let me also talk a little bit about a few things that I would have liked to see in this show that were not a part of it. And maybe it's because they were trying to appeal to a mass audience, and I think it's wrong if that's the case. I wish that there had been more queerness in this show. There were characters who are queer-coded, sure. I wish that they would have included a canonical queer relationship. Lily and Fawn, that would have been great if they had confirmed it. It is not confirmed. It's just heavily implied. Honestly, I was disappointed. I mean, even though I kind of knew it wasn't going to be queer going into it, I was still holding out hope because it is Domundi and they elevate queer voices and queer artists in this industry a lot. So I kind of had hope. And this is something some companies do when they try to take something worldwide, is some companies will often not make things as queer as they normally are, which kind of breaks my heart. As a queer person who lives all the way around the world, on the different side of the world. And if that's the reason why there's no queerness in it, that breaks my heart. I think another potential explanation for a lack of queerness might be because they didn't want people to label it a BL. Now that's a whole different conversation. We could have a video essay about that. But I think if they had included a character who was in an established relationship before the show began that was queer, I think that would have been fine. In fact, I would have appreciated that, having at least some queer representation. Because we got a heterosexual canon relationship between San and Ning. San emotionally cheating with Non, maybe physically cheating with Prow, and then Ning maybe being attracted to Jean. I think I would have liked to see, pick any two characters. Lily and Fawn. Oh, did I call her Fawn? Her name is Fa. There are too many characters. Lily and Fa. Honestly, if they had just called each other like Tirak or, they could have just confirmed it with like one word and I would have been happy. Because honestly, what I really wanted to see from the show was a canon queer relationship that was doomed. Because I like to cry. I like to be in pain. But that has nothing to do with my issues with this show. It was just a want and it didn't get fulfilled, and that's okay. And that's not making me dislike this show. Again, my issues with the show hinge completely on the writing. Something else I wish was in the show was more women surviving till the end. If you're going to include women, killing so many of them off so early. Also, all of their characters, and the Bechdel test is not perfect, okay? None of their conversations with each other passed the Bechdel test. And if you don't know what the Bechdel test is, it was essentially developed by Alison Bechdel, who, if you don't know who that is, you should look Alison up. But the way to pass the Bechdel test, and this is very like third wave feminist of the test, but essentially it's saying that female characters often only exist as objects to influence the development, or they only exist in the context of male characters and are often not by themselves developed, and they only exist in the context of men. Which we can all admit that there's a huge sexism problem in all film industries and all media everywhere. Okay, let's be real. The misogyny runs rampant, and so I was kind of hoping that maybe. And the way to pass the Bechdel test: two characters who are women have to talk to each other and have a conversation that does not talk about a man. And you would think that would be pretty dang easy to do. You'd be surprised at what doesn't pass. So definitely Google your favorite movie or TV show, and there's like a list. There's a website that like, does this show pass the Bechdel test? This show doesn't pass the Bechdel test. Not even in a scene where there were just two women did it pass. I think the scene that immediately comes to mind. I'm not counting the scene with Lily and Fawn. Fawn is a character in Queendom, which I'm reacting to right now. So my brain, Lily and Fawn, where they're running from zombies. So maybe I'm not counting that because they're running. It's not dialogue. But the other scene that comes to mind is with Prao and Ning in the bathroom. And the entire conversation revolves around San, really. So, yeah, I'm a little disappointed with that. Disappointed, but not surprised. Zomvivor, I would rate a 6.5 out of 10. It wasn't the worst show I've ever watched. It wasn't my favorite show, and it definitely is not the favorite piece of zombie media I've ever consumed. It was okay. That's my conclusion. It was okay. The writing was not there for me. The characterization was not there for me. It just missed the mark, in my opinion. And that's okay if you feel different. That's how I feel. Again, there are things I liked about the show. I think they did a really good job with suspense and horror. I think the actors really performed well. The effects were good. The way it was shot, the color grading, that was all great. But for me, because I am a critic, okay? I have a background in communications and writing and journalism. I'm a critic, and this is a review. And when I consume media, I don't just watch it. I don't just read it. I critique. And that's what was trained in me to do since I started taking lit classes, okay? And fell in love with media. I don't just watch something. I really watch it. And in English, we only have one word. But in other languages, there's a difference sometimes. Specifically, I'm watching this with intention, right? So the writing and the characterization just really made the show fall flat for me. And I wish I had liked this show more. I really do. If you made it this far in the video, please leave your thoughts and a zombie emoji down below. And please know, let me say this again. The fact that I did not like this show, I thought it was just okay. This does not mean I'm hating on the actors, the artists, the company, the crew, or the director. This is just my subjective opinion. I do not hate anyone involved. And this show, me disliking one of the Domundi shows won't stop me from watching other shows from Domundi or enjoying the content that they put out. Domundi is still my favorite Thai production company. One show that I don't like just because I think the writing is bad is not going to change it. And also, let me say this. Just because a show has bad writing also doesn't mean I don't enjoy it. I'll be real with you guys. I had fun watching Zomvivor. I did. I just don't think it's well written. I had fun watching it. It was engaging. And I like watching shows. And it wasn't like watching paint dry, in my opinion. That's when things can get really just I enjoyed watching it, even if I didn't, even if it's only a 6.5 to me. Does that make sense? Okay. Anyways, if you want to see another one of my reviews, check out the video I'm going to link after this. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. And again, I'm sorry if this made you mad, but this is all just my opinion. Okay. Thanks for watching. Bye.